And now.
Good. Okay. Sorry if you couldn't hear me before, but again, Chris Carlson with Abacus Solutions was just telling a little bit about the history of Abacus. So we were business partners since 2000. In 2008, we had our first iSeries customer ask if we could host their hardware for them. And we have a very strong backbone in iSeries. And so we knew that we could do it and do it extremely well. So we opened our first data center in 2008. It's actually at our headquarters just outside of Atlanta in Marietta, Georgia. And that data center is actually still in use today. But we quickly outgrew that. All of a sudden, we had tons of customers saying, we're ready to leave premise, we're running out of our skill set is retiring, or we're losing our data center, or being carved off from another entity. There's a myriad of reasons, all of them good reasons to go to the cloud. So we quickly outgrew that data center, and we moved into the QTS family of data centers today is where we are in 2 different locations, QTS Atlanta, QTS Irving, so production and VR. And then we still have the data center at our headquarters. It's a lot of test development, archive, and things of that nature. So here we are 15 years after we opened our first data center, and we have hundreds of customers in the cloud, thousands of environments, petabytes of data, and it's all under the Abacus roof, and all managed by Abacus itself. We don't outsource anything with our iSeries. It's all in-house talent. So that's a little bit of the history. We're growing like crazy, which is really exciting to be a part of. And speaking of growing, Raymond Hamill, who I want to introduce you to, is our solutions architect. He's only been with the company since January, but he's been in the business for many decades, brings a wealth of knowledge and talent to the company. So we're really excited to have him. So with that, I will turn it over to Raymond.
Thanks, Chris. Just to kind of let everybody know, I'm a little different than your typical speakers that you may have been exposed to in the past. I like to interact with everybody because this is the golden opportunity where we can do Q&A throughout the session and kind of just listen to your care abouts. What are the problem areas? What's preventing us from moving to the cloud? And just identifying some of those areas that we're a little skeptical about, or maybe just too content about, and we really haven't embraced the whole cloud solution. But just to kind of piggyback when Chris said earlier about our data centers, we also have data centers that we're partners with worldwide as well also. So the Asia Pacific market, Latin America, EMEA, here in North America, as well as in Canada as well too. So as we go through this PowerPoint, I try not to do death by PowerPoint, but I will focus on some of the key areas. And like Chris said, I've been doing this for 25, 30 years, believe it or not. And I am a subject matter expert for high availability disaster recovery. So I'm the guy you throw in there, you roll the sleeves up, you get a dry erase board, you do a mock-up of the topology, and you identify every single point of failure within your infrastructure to say, where can we provision some of your databases within your infrastructure into a cloud type of solution. I mean, cloud, if you think about it, cloud's been around. Most of you could probably say the same thing that I'm getting ready to say. Cloud's been around for 50 years. It's just been rebranded. It was called hosting and outsourcing. When I was with IBM, we had everybody outsource and hosting to IBM, and we were taking over the on-prem systems and provisioning it into our data centers up in the Research Triangle Park and up in our Sterling Forest and Poughkeepsie, even up in Rochester, Minnesota. So I just want to make sure we understand. And also, you know, when you talk about cloud iSeries, now for those of you in the room, and I know some of you I've had a chance to go and have one-on-one dialogues with and discussions and great discussions. How many of you in here today actually have cloud? You're using cloud today? Okay, all right. So how many of you are using iSeries? Like I was telling, x86? So AS400? Okay, so AS400. Well, what's nice about what we do with an Abacus, you know, there's a hybrid approach, there's a private cloud, there's a open cloud. I mean, there's so many ways where you can identify within your infrastructure and kind of develop a roadmap that is the most profitable, but also give you the assurance you need that you're doing it the right way. Most customers may have a dev environment, they may have a test environment, they may have a production environment, or possibly even a high availability environment, or even a hybrid environment where they have x86, Linux, AIX, even some Z series still out there, mainframe, but also the iSeries as well too. So I'm going to jump right into this PowerPoint presentation, and hopefully I'm doing this correctly. May need some help here. Technical difficulties. All right, let's see if this works. Okay. Yeah, something. Is this the way it's supposed to look on PowerPoint? Okay, I just wanted to make sure. I wasn't paying attention to the screen. So the topic of today is, let's talk about IBM iCloud, which workloads to move and how. And I'm going to talk about some of the pain points, as you can see here. I'm not going to go into this. I mean, that's an ugly mug of me, so don't worry about that. But let me talk about the agenda today. So the agenda today is Cloud Smart 2023. The priorities, the opportunities, the challenges, the infrastructure, the modernization journey, which is exactly what you all do today, modernization. Modernization is key sometimes, especially when you're talking about legacy applications or ISV applications that have been enhanced so much that sometimes even the ISVs don't even support them anymore. ERP applications are a prime example. So it's a great opportunity to roadmap into a cloud solution, which is why we're here today with Abacus. And then also, why organizations move to hosted cloud environments. And, you know, a lot of us have a tendency to do benchmarks. What I mean by benchmarks is we look at the cost differentiator as to what it would cost to obtain a capital expense of all the hardware, the network, the resources. And then you look at a cloud solution, and if you do a true apples to apples comparison, which even boils down to the administrative responsibilities. So if you have somebody who's doing the caring, feeding, and maintaining the health of your iSeries environment or your x86 environment, or maybe managing the DR as a solution or high availability as a solution, those are also entities that we have to include into our cost provisioning when it comes to comparing apples to apples. So when you look at that, you'll be able to identify exactly what you do and don't need. And what I tell everybody is when you look into a cloud type of solution, what is your threshold of pain? What can you live with and live without? Some customers say, listen, I just want my production environment in the cloud. I don't want my development. I don't want my test environment in the cloud. So there's a lot of ways you can test and validate and build that roadmap. And hopefully by the time we finish this class, you'll be able to walk away just understanding that much better what a cloud solution looks like and what it would take to go ahead and do so. Okay. So this is actually a stat. I'm sure everybody's heard of health systems. Fortune now owns health systems. Okay, they're known for robot, all their job scheduling products, and they have a security product as well. Also, they even have an HA product called Robot HA. Okay, but if you look at some of the top 5 concerns of most C-level execs today, security is number 1. I think you all had a chance to go and attend a security class before possibly coming here. Is that correct? So security is really coming a big topic today on the iSeries. I had a great conversation earlier when I was sitting in line with a gentleman during lunch, and we were talking about ransomware attacks, cyber attacks. They're happening more frequently on the iSeries than they ever have in the past. I mean, let's face it, the iSeries, you could take a sledgehammer to the damn thing and the thing will not break. It will not break. But if you look at the x86 environment, the x86 environment is kind of like the open all when it comes to cyber attacks into other platforms, whether it's Unix, AIX, Linux, or even the iSeries. Because the iSeries, there is a part of the iSeries that's kind of the exposed area to all these other platforms, and that is the integrated file system, which I'm sure we've all heard of on the iSeries. So, and I think I used an example earlier. If you create a desktop root map into the integrated file system, guess what? You've now given somebody to go ahead and do a cyber attack to that desktop and now has an open backdoor into the integrated file system of the iSeries. So ransomware is becoming more privy than we think going on today. I see a lot of ransomware, and some people are paying it and some people are not paying it. So it all depends on the data integrity. HADR, high availability. High availability on the iSeries is very different than the x86. The x86, everybody looks at HA and they say active. That's kind of, I can fail you over, I got you virtualized, you're ready to go to whole 9 yards. With an iSeries system, and again, I'm not going to focus on some of these areas, but high availability means you have to look at, is everybody familiar with recovery point and recovery time objectives? Those are 2 common terminologies that are used when you're evaluating cloud solutions. In fact, it better be part of your discussion, because whether it's DR, HA, backup as a service, At Abacus, we have a true scalable RPO, RTO that fits anyone's budget. And if you do a true apples to apples comparison, compare like a capital expense to a cloud solution, you'll see the pros and cons, but you'll see the benefit of moving the cloud because you have the scalability and the flexibility to continue to grow in your environment without having to worry about maintaining the PTFs, the OS upgrades, network changes, users, if you have a high turnover. So we can manage and maintain the health of all of that. That makes sense? Any questions? All right. Modernizing, I mean, that's one of the key things you all do today is modernizing. So I'm not going to focus on that because I think you all have been through quite a bit of training on the modernizing. IBM skills. Look around this room. Just look around. You see any 20-year-olds in here? Except well, I don't see, yeah, you don't see any 20-year-olds in here, but I mean, I will say I was at Common 2 weeks ago, and it's refreshing to see a younger generation embracing the I-Series because of guys like us who sold the product through word of mouth. And that's what sold the I-Series, the platform, for years the way it did. So successful. And it ain't going anywhere. This I-Series system is still running the core applications behind casinos, hospitality, POS, ERP. It's the back end of all that infrastructure. That's running the core applications of the environment. And then data growth. Data growth, obviously, what's nice about cloud is it's capacity on demand. You have scalability, you have flexibility. So let's say you move to a cloud and you have a dev environment and a test environment and a production environment. And maybe you want to consider maybe moving your dev because you want a true proof of concept. You want to validate everything you would test in your production environment. You want to move it slowly into a cloud provision environment and test and validate before you go live with your production environment. These are benchmarks you can solidify or resolve if you're talking to the VP of IT or the CTO or the CIO or the CFO trying to justify the cost. It's possible. It can be done. Think of us as an extension. When I know Chris has been, I think 4 years in right now with the this conference. So think of us as an extension of your team. Our goal is to grow with you, to provision your customers. And I think we talked about possibly even, maybe discussing a SaaS model. That might be a really good lucrative, cost revenue stream for you as well also. Well, we can provision all of that in the back end for you, no matter how you slice it and dice it. So if it's a small little tenth of a core, or if it's a 4-core, 6-core environment running, 30 terabytes, 40 terabytes, we can provision this here at Abacus, okay? So we look at the top priorities. As I just mentioned, skill set shortages, they're not a dime a dozen anymore. We have a lot of customers that come to us and they say, but my system admin's retiring now because he's been in the business for 50 years. And he's finally walking away. So they can call somebody like us and we can provide administrative responsibilities to go and maintain the care and feed of their I-Series systems, whether it's on-prem or in our cloud. And in most cases, the customers will say, hey, listen, I don't want to take on the capital expense of this anymore. I don't want to babysit this thing anymore. I don't want to take care of the OS upgrades, the PTFs, or just enabling, disabling user profiles, or creating line descriptions, device descriptions, whatever, no matter what it is in the I-Series. We can provision and provide those administrative responsibilities to maintain that care and feed. Hardware modernization. If you look at the Power 8s, the Power 9s, the Power 10s, you want to make sure that not only your applications, but they're compatible to the latest and greatest of the fixes and the OS operating system, but also the Power 9s and the Power 10s. So there's a compatibility factor as well also. I mean, IBM support for 7.3 is going to be stopped here, third quarter? I think fourth quarter here in 2023. Yeah. So 7.3 will no longer be supported. So start thinking, start being proactive with your plan. And that's one of the reasons why cloud is such a suitable solution, because we're taking that problem away from you. You don't have to worry about it anymore. And that is a cost justification, okay? Reduce infrastructure costs, moving from a CapEx to an OpEx. Move to a cloud, on-prem, in cloud, or hybrid. So if you have an on-prem system, you have somebody retiring, guess what? You have an MSP like Abacus, we can maintain the health of that environment so you don't have to worry about it anymore. Or if you want to move it to the cloud, absolutely, you have the option to do so. And you now have all the flexibility and scalability you need to grow within your business infrastructure. Compliance, SOC 1, SOC 2, FERPA, HIPAA. I mean, there's so many different certifications that we have to regulate for ourselves because of all our cloud customers. Let us take that burden away from you. You having to do that sometimes and go through those audits can be very cumbersome because now you're allocating half your staff from a development staff all the way down to DBAs to go ahead and maintain and certify the audits for that compliance you're trying to solidify. We take all that burden away from you. That's what we do. Better HADR plan. So again, HADR, when you look at HADR, you look at, I've written my fair share of disaster recovery plans. And when you look at every single pivotal point in a customer's infrastructure, and you look at every point of failure, it boils down to not just the IP or the hardware or the applications. It's down to the users. It's down to the infrastructure of the building. It's down to fuel for the generators, the PDUs. We've taken all that pressure away from you by moving to a cloud type of solution. OS upgrades. You'll never have to worry about doing an OS upgrade again, but it also gives you the luxury, especially in your application. If you want to test and validate the compatibility going to a new operating system, this is one of the advantages in cloud. We can provision you a 7.5 environment or whatever OS we go to next with IBM. And you can do a save, restore, test, and validate and say, hey, listen, before we start sending out all the fixes and validating everything, you now have your own little sandbox or your jukebox to go ahead and play with and do what you need to do to go ahead and validate. These are a lot of the flexibilities you have behind it. Need help with managing IBM I? We provide all the administrative. We have 3 tiers of support, and we have a NOC that's 24/7, 365 days a year that can pretty much handle any type of severity that you run into, whether it's a major outage or something sitting out there in QSA software that hasn't been responded to in 2 days, or a tape hasn't been initialized. If your box is on-prem and you're still using tape, we can maintain and say, hey, listen, if you've got an escalation process or a run book that we create for you, we can call who's ever on that escalation process and say, hey, listen, you've got a tape that hasn't been initialized or the hopper needs to be loaded up. So again, a lot of ways we can kind of massage and kind of help facilitate and ideally define and create the best cloud solution for your environment. Any questions? You got to have some questions. Come on, there's got to be some questions here. Because I'll tell you, I myself, when I first started IBM, this is up in the Research Triangle Park. I actually started at Boca to Atlanta to the Research Triangle Park in North Carolina. I spent a lot of time with DR and high availability. It was one of my sweet spots because I always liked breaking, destroying, and rebuilding. Breaking, destroying, and rebuilding. And DR has always been one of those. If you don't test it, you're never going to know if it's going to work. You're never going to know. If you're doing it just for audit purposes or SLAs or compliance, that's great. But if your CFO or your CTO says, wait a minute, we had a ransomware attack last week. How come we didn't do a role swap to our DR box or to our HA server? Or better yet, how come we didn't recover from tape? These are the kind of problems that you could get caught with your pants down and say, hey, wait a minute, we just lost about, $500,000, $1 million, $2 million in one day. So that's why business continuity plans are very important as well. Also, you got to justify the cost. Okay.
So what does Carrie stand for?
What does Carrie stand?
CARI.
I don't know.
Containment area for relocated
I'm from South Florida, so I'm actually a Southerner.
I worked for IBM too.
Oh, did you? I did not know that. I was a bill. Yeah. I did not know that. That was the first time my allergies ever really got bad was when I moved to North Carolina. Yeah, just the pine pollen up there was just horrendous. No street sweepers had come through, and it looked like a yellow brick road with all that water pumping through it to those little swell areas. I think.
So I'm talking about this, Jonathan, I have a question for you because you were kind of all singing, all dancing dude for like 20 years of your company.
Not 20 years, but it did.
15 or so, but I mean, for a long time.
Yeah.
You're doing development, and you're doing networking, you're doing provisioning, you're doing all this stuff, and then you get acquired by somebody else and you have to do something at headquarters. When you think about what Abacus is doing, what kind of peace of mind does that give you?
If we had stayed on the ERP system we had, losing the data center, I think I would have been advocating that we take a look at doing a high availability
Yeah.
with you folks and dropping the expensive contract with SunGard.
Yep.
Because, you know, where I worked, we were located in suburban Philadelphia. And we were using SunGard 401 North Broad Street, Philadelphia, as Wisconsin, or, you know, wherever we go.
Correct.
The biggest problem is, you know, if you take a look at disaster recovery, you know, if a bomb dropped on the building, yeah, Philadelphia would still be there. But the more realistic thing would have been some kind of a natural weather-related disaster that would have taken out 401 North Broad and us.
Yep.
And then we're SOL.
Yep.
And again, we're switching from a capital expense to an operating expense. What Mark was saying, I was there for 19 years. In 2017, there had been 3 of us, one operations guy, one extra developer besides me. Because of financial difficulties, the IT director had to lay off 2 of those people. That left me, and he got away with it because I had done this much like Raymond. You know, I'm one of these enthusiasts. I could talk to the machine on the operational level as well as the development level. They could get away with it. But from 2017 till I retired in 2021, I was the only body in a $500 million manufacturing company that knew anything about their business. Now, that's scary as hell.
And that goes back to redundancy, as I was talking about earlier. You've got one point of failure right there.
Yeah.
He's the only redundancy. So if anything, and God forsake, if anything were to happen, there would be nobody else to lean on.
And
So when you look at,
I'm the oldest guy in this room. I can guarantee.
so again, I mean, when you look at disaster recovery, you have to identify every single point of failure. And I know we all say to ourselves, yeah, the I-Series, it never fails. Well, what happens if it does? Are you going to be the one talking to your CFO or your chief revenue officer trying to figure out, justify you just lost $1 million or $20 million in one day? I guarantee you're going to be slipped a pink slip the next day. Because I mean, it's the nature of the whole plan, the whole planning behind it. And again, that goes back to what we talked about earlier. If you don't test your DR plan, you're never going to know if it's going to be successfully executed. You have to test, you have to validate, whether it's annually, whether it's once a quarter. Now with HA solutions, like HA software solutions, like the Precisely products, which is like the Mimics, the Quick Eds, the iTerra products, or the Moxaba, or Robot HA. We talked about Robot HA. All these products use something on the I-Series called journaling, which I know you are very familiar with your applications. Journaling is a very powerful tool if it's utilized correctly. If you don't manage it, what does it do? Sucks up performance and DASD on the system. Before you know it, you're sitting at 72%, and you're already sitting at 90% because journal receivers are not being deleted off the system. So it's all about common sense. If you use automation to maintain a lot of these procedures and processes, it'll alleviate some of these bottlenecks. So when you look at why organizations are moving to hosted cloud environments, and that goes back to when we first started this session, cloud's been around for a long time. And it is now really being embraced because customers are seeing the impact, but the cost differentiator, when you do an apples to apples comparison between doing on-prem and holding on to that capital expense compared to moving to a cloud type of solution. But you have to consider not just the hardware, not just the network. What are the pieces? If you have SD-WAN, if you've got compression devices, if you've got Active Directories, or if you've got other things that need to be provisioned, as well as resource to maintain this environment. That all needs to be added into the cost. Okay. So you've got the skill sets. We have subject matter experts within Advocates, and we're still looking for the best of the best out there to go and facilitate our team because we want to make sure that when our NOC gives a call, our 24/7, 365-day support center, when they get a call, we want to make sure we're able to resolve and answer the problem almost immediately. IBM support. Try calling IBM support. See how long you sit and wait. Sometimes you won't even get a call for 6 hours, 8 hours, or sometimes even the next day. That old IBM mentality, I don't understand it, but we've lost that whole touch and feel, like that really customer service that a lot of us grew up with. And that's one of the things we're doing in Advocates. In fact, one thing we took it one step even further. What we're doing now is called strategic business reviews within Advocates. We want to engage back with our customers. We want to listen to their care abouts and listen to where the problem areas that'll help us become better customer service support reps. And we're doing this now, and it's actually become very profitable for us because we end up finding out there's things that could be automated, less user error. If I can automate it, I'd alleviate the whole problem of human error. And that's going to make it just that much more successful. Urgent capacity. You know, we have customers on a weekly basis that says, hey, listen, I need another 250 gig or 2 terabytes of DASI configured to my system. Guess what? Try doing that in your on-prem environment. How long do you think it's going to take before you get that storage or DASI installed? With us, same day. Sometimes within the hour. Within the hour. Memory, same thing. CPW, or if there's other licensed programs, because the operating system only comes with a set SWAMA of the LPPs, and if there's other LPPs that you want to add, we'll take that burden off of you. We'll get the pricing, we'll install it. Sometimes it requires an IPL, sometimes it doesn't. But we've taken that whole burden away from you to go ahead and do. So again, there's a lot of flexibility in utilizing a cloud type model. Software, hardware refresh, temporary environments. You know, this is one of the benefits also, especially in a dev environment. We got a customer that calls us up and says, hey, listen, can you provision me a system for 3 months to go and do some test and validation and development? Guess what? You can do that in cloud. You can't do that in your environment. You cannot. Quick, integrate acquisitions, data center contract. I mean, there's just the security threats, compliance, what we've done. Now, I understand there was a discussion with security prior to this. If you all know us, Abacus, we now have Trinity Guard, which you may have been exposed to in the past. It's now part of our offerings. What we're doing with our cloud solutions is we're consolidating security Trinity Guard into our cloud offerings. So we want to make sure our customers are covered at every single point of failure, even down to the security of the operating system of the iSeries. So we're including this into our cloud offerings here at Abacus. I'm going to go ahead and bypass this, but the consumption models, I mean, every one of us have a perfect desire and need for some type of provision cloud solution. Whether it's a cloud, total cloud, whether it's on-premise and maybe you're replicating using an HA software solution into our cloud type of scenario, or a SAN-to-SAN replication. We have a lot of, in fact, that's a best practice for us. We use SAN-to-SAN replication, which gives you the best recovery point. I think it's within 5 minutes. You look at HA software solutions.
Oh, yeah, you're right. Sorry.
Yeah, it's okay. It's okay. When you look at HA software solutions, you still have to worry about replication. You still have to worry about bandwidth requirements to make sure that it's able to keep up with all the populated data between your source box to your target box, especially if you're on 2 different subnets. Now, this is the funny part. There's actually a lot of customers out there today that are in the same data center, on the same subnet, same network, and they have DR and HA side by side with the production server. Now ask yourself this question, is that DR and HA? Exactly. You'd be surprised how many customers to this day are still doing that. And I'm like, one failure, you're done.
When we were a customer, we were going to QTS Metro, which was Atlanta, and our backup was at the other one,
Irving, Texas.
Right. Yep. Yeah, want them geographically dispersed. And we won't say the name because we're working with an extremely large company right now that everyone knows, and they are doing DR with the boxes sitting right next to each other.
Blows
We're
me
talking
away.
about a worldwide company that everybody knows.
Yep.
And they, what we're trying to tell them that, look, you need to get in a better situation. If you have a disaster, you're likely going to be completely affected.
You're dead. You're dead. You got to ask yourself, customers, I mean, again, I'm not nitpicking or pointing the finger. Everybody has their own, threshold of pain as far as what they can live with and live without. But when you look at that scenario, how do you pass audits? How do you solidify audit constraints? I mean, that just scares the hell out of me sometimes. How do you pass compliance?
Well, I can tell you another story. The one coworker got laid off, the operations guy, he would moonlight at Sun, assisting customers on disaster recovery tests. There was a retailer who I will not name, he came in, he came back saying, they are all screwed up. They had multiple partitions and they did not get things done.
You talking about Sunrise?
Yeah, he's talking about Sunrise. He had one of his counterparts moonlighting, working there at night.
Yeah.
Working there at night.
We we tried for a long time to help them out with their PR. They want to do it on their own. But,
Yep.
yeah.
Even down to the application level, where a lot of the ERP applications, I mean, I've run into it so many times. And I'll use JD Edwards as an example. I'm going to use that as an example. Where, everybody knows the infamous files they're called 901, 911, 401, 4. These are the big master files when it comes to JD Edwards. We have some customers that have never purged these in almost 25, 30 years. Let that sink in. Terabyte files with almost a half a terabyte in deleted records that have never been purged from the system. And they keep buying hardware. And I'm thinking to myself, I'll sell you all the hardware you want. But if you don't identify the true point of failure in some of these issues, you're never going to be able to move to a cloud solution because you're not identifying the root cause of the problems in your iSeries environment. And the reorg while active on the iSeries is really a nice feature. I think there's actually a reorg while active even with subsets as well also. So you can even subset down to the relative record number based on the file length, and you can identify which records you want to purge during certain windows, so you don't have any contention. So it's pretty slick. It's very, very slick. So implementing development systems. I mean, this is what I'm doing now. What I'm doing now is I'm kind of creating a roadmap on some ideas you can think of within your infrastructure. So if you have a dev environment, test environment, a production environment, you can use a dev environment and we can provision for you, and you can test and validate. We have some customers that do it all day long. They'll test and validate their applications, and they'll even use this dev environment to go and roll out all the changes into their production servers. So now you've created a change management process using this dev provision system in our cloud. It's a great solution because I believe it or not, I used to write on MVS and VM17. Believe it or not, I did. I wrote Rex, I did some COBOL, I did some RPG. And I will say, you give me storage, you give me DASD, I'm going to take it. I would dupe libraries, copy files. I would dupe copy. And I have like 4 or 5 sets. Well, guess what? If that's the case and you're not maintaining and managing that, again, that's what's nice about cloud. We can add everything you want on demand. We can provision, we can take away. We can provision, we can take away. All it is a simple addendum that says, hey, I'm no longer using 5 terabytes. I'm down to 2 terabytes now, and I don't need it. Well, guess what? That's one of the benefits. You have so much control and flexibility in using cloud type of solutions. It's within your fingertips. It's all right there. So many of us step back and we become content and we forget about stepping forward and we're getting behind the bandwagon. We can't do this anymore. We have to embrace this because this is where it's going, whether we like it or not. It's going there. And the sooner you go to it, the sooner you move to it, the less problems you're going to have when it comes to testing that true disaster recovery or the high availability, because all that liability is now on us. That liability is no longer on you. It is on us. And I guarantee you, we're going to do everything in our power to make sure it's success every single time. Because if it doesn't, you know what they're going to want? I want some money back. So that's what we do. So development is a great opportunity to develop a roadmap moving into a cloud type of solution before you even think about moving your production environment. If it's test, you could do that as well also. You can test and validate just like you would in a production environment, your applications to validate everything is working the way it's supposed to. And then from there, you can do a refresh of the data. You don't have to do a full option 21. The option 21 is typically, if everybody familiar with the option 21 in the iSeries, which is the full system save, that's typically what you do. In most HADR type of provisioning, we usually want some kind of option 21 to at least build the operating system, the licks, and everything within queues, everything that begins with our queue. And then from there, if you want to refresh the data, you can do a save all active, you can do a save change object, you can do a save all user, and that'll be just a refresh of the data. And if you use an IFS, same thing. Save IFS. Okay. Does it make sense kind of what I'm talking about and kind of thinking about roadmaps on how I'm going to utilize, cloud and thinking of proactive growth within my infrastructure, not to work. What's that?
You're always saying that.
No.
I'm a provider.
Oh, okay, good deal. But I mean, even like provisioning small little environments, like a core of an environment or a tenth of a core, and you only need 8 gigs of memory and maybe 250 gigs of storage. My desktop is bigger than that. Think about it. my desktop. You can do this with cloud.
Raymond was trying to sell me one last night.
No, we were actually talking about, I wish, IBM, if you look at an iSeries, it's just a big old computer. It's just a big old PC. That's all it is. That's all it really is.
It's a better operating system.
Yeah, with a 10 times, 100 times better operating system. But can you imagine if IBM would have positioned Microsoft during that time frame and started creating their own desktops, laptops, the whole 9 yards, and if they would have marketed it like they should have instead of using word of mouth, we would be sitting probably in a bigger classroom right now with about 1,000 students in there talking about IBM still to this day.
Yeah.
Still to this day. Application testing. I mean, this is one of the benefits. You can do and test and validate all your applications. So if you have to go through a change management, beta, LA, GA, the whole 9 yards, you have the flexibility to do so in a provisioned cloud environment. You could develop your own change management process just like you do if you were on-prem. You have a rollout. You've got dev, test, QA, production. You've got the same process you can build and we can provision it in our cloud. And all you got to worry about is exactly what you need to do is focus on the application. You're not wearing, 100 hats. I'm the administrator. I'm the initialized tape. I'm the hardware provider. I'm the disaster recovery attendant. I am the NOC 24/7 when I'm getting a call at 2 o'clock in the morning. That's not you anymore. That's us. That's why we have a NOC that's 24/7, 365 days a year. They do not shut down. We take all these problems away from you and we mitigate all these issues and we bring it in-house. Okay. Hope I'm okay on time. OS upgrades. You can test and validate. You can do test flights. We do a lot of test flights with our customers. We can do OS upgrades to 7.5 because a lot of us, especially the application development, we don't have that luxury to test and validate with the latest and greatest operating system. We have to deal with what we have, or we have to do an OS upgrade and then test it on the fly. Well, this is something you can do with OS upgrades. You have a 7.3 box and maybe you want to go to 7.5. You can use that provision 7.5, do a save and restore to that 7.5 environment, test and validate as much as you want. This is one of the scalability designs you have in cloud. I hope you're starting to get the picture here. I mean, it's just leaving so many back problems we've had in the past, and it's now been given to an MSP. And we take all that liability away from you. You don't have to worry about it anymore. Go ahead, sir.
Those, the OS upgrade is done on the non-prod L part, so.
Yep.
Don't touch prod, everything runs as usual, and then when you're ready to implement it, good to go.
Yeah, our goal is to secure, we'll follow whatever retention security policies you have in place today. We will follow the best practice standards as well as make revisions based on your standards as well also. So we'll make sure we modify any changes that we have for existing clients or customers coming on board to the cloud solutions. Offsite backup. This is one of the things I talked about earlier. When you look at RTO, what I like about what we've done, we have an arsenal of solutions that solidifies every RTO. And what I mean, you got a SAN-to-SAN replication, you got data domain, you got VTL, you got high availability as a service, which is a software product, and you can scale that all the way down to a tape backup or using something like a vault, a virtual vault. And you can virtualize using a simple little x86 desktop that's sitting in your office, and that's now being used as the vault to do the backups on your iSeries system. And that little x86 is going to send it to our cloud, and you now have a local backup and you have a remote backup. So we have a cost justification to scale no matter what budget our customer's looking at to solidify those RTO concerns. And just like I've said a couple of times now, every customer has their own threshold of pain. They want DR, they want HA. Yeah, I'm going to throw it to you, but it's going to be at cost. There's going to be a cost associated. That's why I tell everybody, when you scale, look, what is your RPO and RTO that you must have? Can you afford to be down for a couple of days? Some customers, yeah, absolutely. We were talking to a customer yesterday, a big old a fruit grower. It's not Sunkist, but it's a fruit grower on the West Coast, and they're down 5 months out of the year. So they only run this iSeries system 7 months out of the year, and then they turn it off for 5 minutes, and they come back and turn it back on again. It's crazy. And then you have systems who can't afford to take your systems down, and they're true 24/7, 365, and they never shut down their system. Never shut it down. If you have a box that's running 24/7, 365, you better start looking at a cloud solution. Because I'll tell you what, if you don't, and again, that goes back, we've said it several times, that box has any kind of catastrophic outage, you're done. That is a major, major outage. So with offsite backups, we can do remote backups, we can do on-site backups. I mean, there's several ways. If you have DR, say within our cloud, and we provision an I-Series system for your production environment, say QTS Atlanta, we'll do a local backup and we'll do a remote backup. Because what happens is if that QTS data center ever goes down, guess what? We still have the remote backups to go ahead and build and provision an I-Series system in the event of a disaster recovery. So a lot of scalability here you can add. Okay. And again, our goal is every time we talk to a prospect or an opportunity or an ISV is we really want to listen to where are your problem areas? Where are the care abouts? What are the areas you're trying to prevent from being catastrophic moving forward? We want to listen, we care. Hence why we started building the strategic business reviews. Disaster recovery. I mean, DR, we talked about this numerous times throughout this conversation. If you don't test it, you're never going to know it's going to work. So when you look at the scale here, you look at the recovery time, the recovery point objective, it could be seconds, minutes, hours, days, or even weeks. And that's why I just said that one example, that one client who shuts down their box 5 months out of the year, only runs it for 7 months. And then there's big customers, big Enterprise Plus customers that run it 24/7, 365, and they never shut it down. They never, ever shut it down. Ransomware is becoming more frequent on the I-Series. I hate to say it. We all thought the I-Series was impenetrable, and guess what? We're now starting to see a lot more. They don't advertise it. You don't see it on, News 400 or iTech magazines. You don't see it out there, but we listen to it. We have customers calling us up. We're talking about like big beverage companies. I'm not gonna say any names, disclosing anything. Big beverage companies, POS, industrial logistics, casinos. They're getting ransomware attacks. Some are paying it, some are not. So in our cloud solution, that is included in our cloud solution. Cyber attacks, we're preventing it, and we're bundling it into our cloud offering. And you don't even know, you don't even see the cost justification built into our cloud offering. But it's just one more layer to make sure our customers are protected at every single point of failure.
One question related to that so that we get some discussion.
Yep.
How do you test it until recovery, disaster recovery is very close to our home?
Yep.
Let's say that's my biggest concern.
Is how often?
In our business, but how do you test and train them to your customers? You have some service.
In our cloud offering, we include an annual test. We include with every one of our cloud offerings an annual test for your DR. Whether it's what do we call it? We call it a smoke test.
Smoke test.
Yeah, smoke test.
Network test.
Yeah. There's 3 components that really ideally define a disaster recovery type of scenario. Whether you're using DR or HA software as a solution, there's 3 parts. You have to test the operating system, the IBM components, the application, and last but not least, the network. Those are the 3 major components you always have to test and validate when you do DR high availability. And with HA products, there's even more components because you have to worry about role swapping the HA solution, and you got to make sure you got bandwidth sufficient enough to go and replicate the data between source box, target box, and you cannot let those users on that box until every one of them use something called an apply process. And that apply is used for applying all the entries that are being sent from journal receivers, from the production server to the backup server. You cannot let your users on that system until that apply process is caught up. Because if you don't, you could potentially cause data integrity issues. So again, we add a smoke test into our DR, our HA, even SAN. It's something that it's part of our cloud offering. And we're not gonna, hold a gun to you in any way or shape or form saying you've got to do a DR test, but I will say it's yours to use. You can.
Are the customers interested in that nowadays?
Oh yeah.
So we do a onboarding DR test as well. So whether you are using us just as a target for HA or DR, or you're coming full production test of everything in the cloud, we do an onboarding DR test. So you've got that, that you've got a vetted DR test that's going to work in the event of a disaster. And then an annual one is also included. So and that's scheduled through our NOC. At any time you want to do that, we set it up and schedule that with you with one of our project managers. And so you've got a vetted DR test to show the business that you're good to go in the event of disaster.
To be honest, our microservice
Yeah.
I-Series, but all the integrations we have, all the other boxes,
X86.
all the banks and authorities, if you need to rebuild the
Yep.
system.
Yeah,
Really
absolutely.
expensive to test.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, very expensive. I know we're kind of cutting it close on time. I'm one of those kind of guys. I'm like the Energizer Bunny. I can keep going and going and going and going. I just got to be mindful of the time we have allotted here. High availability. I think we've talked enough about high availability. I mean, most of the time it's going to be a hardware high availability or it's going to be a software-based type of high availability solution. Again, high availability in the I-Series. I don't even really want to call it high availability because high availability means I have an active server, which is that's the common naming convention they use in x86 and other VM environments. In the I-Series, it's really RPO, RTO. What can you live with and live without? Okay. Archiving. We have a lot of customers that no longer, maybe they have a production environment and maybe they've migrated to SAP or the x86 world or AIX, but they still need to have this I-Series system sitting on the back end to retrieve old data or for auditing purposes. Maybe they need to have 7 years online. So this is another little gifting that you have with cloud solutions and the flexibility and capabilities you have. We can build this into an archive system and you can use it however you want to go and retrieve information back into your infrastructure and your environment. So again, a lot of control you have with cloud type of solutions. You're not going to find a more scalable solution than talking to a cloud provider, an MSP provider. An Abacus, this is what we've done. We've been doing this for years and we're expanding it even more. And we're looking at other points of failure to identify any kind of bottleneck when the customer is doing DR testing. Okay. Move the entire system to cloud. We have a lot of customers, instead of doing a roadmap and moving a test or a development environment into a cloud type of solution, we have some customers say, listen, I just don't want to take on this capital expense. I'm done with it. I'm done with it. CFOs, sometimes they'll look at this I-Series like, what the heck is this? Because some of these C-level execs coming into the IT world are not real familiarized with the I-Series systems or the AS400 systems or the power systems. They're used to x86. Everybody's used to x86 or Linux or Unix or AIX. So with this, you can move the whole entire infrastructure of your cloud environment, and not just the I-Series. We also do x86. The only platform we do not support today is Z-Series. But we do have a partner that we have a relationship with that can provision the Z-Series systems for you, the mainframes. But today in our cloud, we support I-Series, x86, Linux, Unix, and I-Series. The only system we do not support is Z-Series in our cloud today, but we have a business partner that we work with. And again, if for demographic issues, because I know a lot of attendees here are from all over the world, we have data centers all over the world that we're able to leverage using our cloud provisioning, as well as the administrative responsibilities, the care and feed and take care of the health of the environment. So we can do all this on the back end for you. Okay, cloud adoption strategies, crawl, this is great. Crawl, walk, run, big bang, dive in head first. I mean, what's your threshold of pain? Do you want to build a roadmap to go and build that trust with the vendor you're working with? Maybe you have other ISVs to go and validate and benchmark to make sure it's even compatible to use into a cloud type of scenario, or an OS upgrade you're going to go and move to a migrate to. Offload non-revenue generating task. Shore up skill set shortages, all the way down to tired of hardware refresh cycles, which is always tiresome sometimes, because most of us, whenever we take down a system that requires say like a microcoded PTF or an OS upgrade, the only windows of opportunity we have sometimes are when? After hours, on the weekend, during holidays, during lockdown, during the fourth quarter of the annual year. That's a headache on us sometimes. You don't have to worry about this when you're dealing with cloud. We've taken all that responsibility and that liability away from you, and it now has been burdened onto us. And this is what we do best. This is what we do. So again, I ask you, don't keep stepping back. You got to step forward. You got to move forward. All right. Cloud managed services, just kind of the high overview briefing. Private, prem, hybrid, all the way down to security, and then managed services, whether you want Abacus to go ahead and maintain the care and feed of the system itself. And we have multi-levels of support that we provide within our tiers. We have 1, 2, and 3, and we could always get you a kind of a subset of what those subscriptions are. And then also high availability, disaster recovery, maintenance and technology. We're taking all that heartache and we're maintaining the health of the environment for you. So you don't have to worry about it. You can focus on development, application support, and maintaining the health of the application itself. We'll maintain everything else for you. Why Abacus? Well, like I said, we've been doing this for over 20 years. This is second nature to us. These discussions we talked about and all the different disaster scenarios we talked about, we felt it, we fixed it, we've resolved it, and we've developed best practices in place to prevent these issues not happening just with the one customer we work with, but all the customers. I mean, even down to SAN. SANs have outages as well also. I mean, unfortunately, PDUs have problem areas. Raised floor environments where the network trays are not stacked correctly, and you got somebody walking back there, tripping over wires, and before you know it, you lost a NIC card in the back of your I-Series system. It happens. I've seen back in the day when I was IBM, I had outsourced contractors come in back in the day when everything was in a raised floor environment underneath. I'd have somebody across the hall about 50 yards away, 100 yards away, pulling cables just like this. And in the middle of the night, 2 o'clock in the morning, we lose the system, and we're trying to troubleshoot that after they're done with that contractor, resolve that issue. It's not easy. So we take away all that liability. We're managing, we're monitoring 24/7, 365 that you have what you paid for based on the RPO and RTO is designed, and you have all the flexibility and scalability you need in the cloud type of adoption. Any questions? Concerns? Any problem areas?
I got a question. How many of you in here have had questions from leadership or at least discussions about cloud? Has it come up in meetings? Has we talked about it all? Yeah, it's definitely it's the present for a lot of people and it's the future for pretty much everyone. So definitely engage us, through Mark or directly, and we're happy to answer questions and talk with anyone in your company that has questions and wants to learn more about it.
If you guys ever want to do a mock-up,
I think one scenario that I've come across is people that said we have to do something in the box, we said, and then we did something with Amazon, and then for a variety of reasons, it's like, well, it used to really be economical, now it's really not economical, or business conditions have changed, so then.
Absolutely.
And we need to widen, look at spectrum of things.
And a lot of customers have those intertwined workloads on the x86. It needs to be near the AS100 for zero latency. So we have the x86 offering specifically for that. I mean, the AS100 I-Series is the anchor that kind of drags it in with it. So we can definitely help there as well. We've got probably, how many of our customers have x86 with the I-Series?
I'd say at least 50%, if not
Yeah,
more.
I would say
If not more,
75.
easily. I'd say 50%, if not more. And even if you're using Azure or AWS or Google or Amazon, really all it is just a matter of tailoring another IP interface or network into our cloud type of solution. And you'll have this, it's blind to the end user. The end user has no idea where they are on the network because it's all being controlled by either DNS or IP traffic. All of it is. Yep. No, they don't care. They just want to make sure you give me a screen and I can log in and do my work. Yeah.
It's fast and it works. That's all they care about. And the other customers that aren't bringing their x86 workloads are connected to AWS or Azure, some other provider.
But even some of the providers that do I-Series, I'll use like SkyTap as a prime example. I'm sure some of you may have heard of SkyTap. They're still using people like us as subject matter experts to help facilitate the migrations it takes to move into a virtual environment. The migration is probably the biggest topic sometimes when you're moving to a cloud type of solution, because the customer is going to come back and say, I can't afford to lose any downtime. Or we have a customer like Chris was talking about earlier, and I'll say it candidly, over 108, 110 terabytes. You're not going to do a lift and shift of 108, 110 terabytes. You're going to have to be a little creative here and use solutions like SAN-to-SAN replication to move them from one environment to another. So there's a number of ways we could solidify and mitigate those problems from those outages happening with our clients. We do this day in and day out, and every customer is different. So without further ado, I hit it right on the nail. An hour in, so we're good. I wanted to make sure we had enough time here on the end to have a Q&A discussion, but thank you for attending. Yeah, margaritas and bourbon and yeah, tequila shots. But
Real quick, before you go, the night that we, and you know, he's telling the truth. The night we did this, we cut over a system because I was losing the data center. We moved it at about 2 a.m. on a Saturday morning. Saturday morning when some of the folks got into work, because we did have people working Saturdays in one facility, they had no idea anything had changed. But all of a sudden, they were running on their system in Marietta, and our system in southeastern Pennsylvania was no longer, it works.
you just got to test it. You got to believe it. You got to trust your vendors. You got to trust who's provisioning the hardware for it. And that's our goal. Our goal is to build a long-term relationship. We're not in it for the 1 month, 2 month, 3 month contracts. I mean, we'll do it. Don't get me wrong, to help and assist. But our goal is to build that long-term relationship because we want to be that vendor of choice is the best way to say it. We want to give you that white glove service. And that white glove service, you don't see very often today. You do not see it often today.
And as opposed to one petition that was supposed to be decommissioned in the end of 2021, it's still running. Because I'm the only one in the company that knew anything about it, even though I'm retired. They called me if they needed it.
Thank you. Thank you so much.